It was about 3,000 years ago when King Solomon built the first temple in Jerusalem. Finally, for the Jewish people, God had a proper house. The Ark of the Covenant, which contained the broken pieces of the tablets that Moses brings down from Mount Sinai, well, that rested in the back of the temple, and it was only accessed once a year by the priests. The temple was God's house, and God's glory radiated out from that temple. To be in Jerusalem was to be in the presence of God, and to be at the temple complex was to feel God's love and presence deeply and more vibrantly. But in 586 BC, Babylonians came from the east, and they destroyed Jerusalem, and they leveled the temple, and everything that was there was lost. Many of the Israelites were sent into exile back into Babylon, and there in exile in Babylon, they began to ask questions. Where was God? What had happened to God? More to the point, if God lived in the temple and the temple was destroyed, was God destroyed? Many saw this as a calling for them to wipe their hands of a singular Jewish God altogether, and they sought to convert to the Babylonian faith. But there were faithful people in that mix, faithful Jews there in exile who thought the opposite. This was a chance to deepen their understanding of God. It wasn't that God had failed them. It was that their theology around God had failed them. And so they sought to study God deeper. They went back and looked at the scriptures that they had been handed down to them. They went back and listened to the oral traditions again. They put it all together. And there in exile, in Babylon, they constructed the first 5 books of the Bible as we've inherited them. That is their gift to us. The oral traditions were there, but they didn't exist in that form until exile, when they were away from the temple, away from Jerusalem, and they missed it. They missed God, and they wanted to be with God and understand God more deeply. In doing that, they found that God was just as much with them in Babylon as God had ever been with them in Jerusalem. We find ourselves now in a season of exile. We're not able to gather in there on this Sunday as much as I would love for us to be there once again. But I think in this season of exile, we have an opportunity to do what those early Jewish forefathers and mothers did, and to deepen our understanding of God. If your knowledge and relationship with God was built around the church, now's the time to see God in new ways, to go back and look at that Bible that's been on your shelf and maybe dust it off and open it up. Same with that prayer book that you got at your confirmation, or maybe an old hymnal. They are just as available to you now as they ever were in there. So too is the community. We are still the church, and we're finding ways to connect with one another online and by phone. We are reinventing ourselves in this season of exile. My hope for us is that when we do return to that church, and we will return to that church, we do so with a deeper knowledge of God, a deeper understanding of God's love for us, and an appreciation that God was with us out here just as much as God was ever with us in there. God was with us all along.